All right, we're going to talk about a huge shift in what it means to own something. And you know what? The key to getting it is a feeling you probably had, like this morning. Just think about the last time you bought a coffee, right? It probably went a little something like this. You get that quick, almost automatic glance at your screen. A simple tap, and boom, done. The whole thing is over. No forms, no waiting, zero friction. Okay, so that's super simple, fast, secure feeling. What if you could apply that exact same logic to owning, say, a piece of a building or a work of art? That's the promise we're going to unpack today. All right, so let's get into it. What is this tap to own feeling for real? Well, to really get it, we've got to do one thing first. We have to separate the actual tech from all the noise and hype surrounding it. And this is absolutely crucial. This is not about inventing some new crypto coin to speculate on. Nope. It's about taking the systems we already have for ownership, which are often super clunky, right? And just giving them a massive, much-needed digital upgrade. Okay, so that brings us to the big question. Let's cut through all the buzzwords and get down to a really simple definition of what tokenization actually is. At its core, it's actually pretty straightforward. You take a real-world asset, something with value, like a skyscraper, a famous painting, you name it, and you create a unique digital certificate for it, a token. This token represents legal ownership. It's kind of like a digital title deed, but one that lives on a super secure network. Now this is the secret sauce, verifiable uniqueness. I mean, think about it. You can copy-paste a digital photo a million times, and every single copy is identical. A token is the complete opposite. It's built to be provably one of a kind. You just can't copy and paste ownership. And here's where it gets really, really powerful. These things aren't just static digital files. They are programmable. You can literally build rules right into the token itself. Rules like who is allowed to own this, or how do we handle payouts? And just a quick note here, when we say automatic, we're talking about the bookkeeping, the admin stuff. It's not a magic wand to get around actual laws. Okay, to really get the potential here, we have to zoom out a bit. This isn't just about tokenizing one building or one painting. The big idea is to create a universal standard for how value itself moves around. And this is the perfect analogy. Before the shipping container, trying to load a ship was just chaos, a total mess of different size crates, bags, and boxes. The standard container changed everything because it was a universal format. Suddenly, it didn't matter what was inside the box. Any crane, any truck, any ship, anywhere in the world could move it. So we're applying that exact same logic to assets. Tokenization is trying to be the shipping container for value. So step one, you put any asset you want into a standard digital box. Step two, that box can now move super easily on these new digital rails. And what's the results? Step three, you get a clean, universal way to transfer value anywhere. Okay, that's the big, grand vision. But let's bring it back down to earth for a second. Let's answer the question you're probably asking. Why does any of this actually matter? What's the payoff? Yeah, exactly. So what? Why should anyone care? What problems does this really solve? Well, it really boils down to three core benefits. You've got speed, cost, and access. It's faster because you're swapping out manual steps for code. It's cheaper because you're cutting down on paperwork and a lot of the middlemen. And maybe the biggest one of all is access. You can take a huge, expensive asset and slice it up into tiny, affordable pieces. That opens the door for a whole new group of people to invest.
The theory is cool and all, but a real example is what makes it click. So let's imagine a $10 million commercial building.
Okay, so the old way of owning a piece of that building? Super complex, tons of lawyers, tons of paperwork. But with tokenization, you could represent the ownership of that entire building with, let's say, 1 million tokens. Now, you don't need millions of dollars to get in the game. You could just buy 10,000 of those tokens and boom, you own exactly 1% of that building. Your ownership is crystal clear, it's all recorded digitally, and guess what? You get 1% of the rent money. And this really just sums it all up, doesn't it? We're moving from paper to own, with all the delays, all the costs, all the headaches, to tap to own. A world where transferring ownership of a real thing can feel just as easy and secure as buying a gallon of milk. All right, I know this all sounds pretty amazing, but before we get too carried away, let's pump the brakes for a second and do a quick reality check. We need to talk about the tools that make this work. And, more importantly, a big warning. So, You've probably heard the word blockchain thrown around with all this, and for good reason. Just think of blockchain as a shared record book. Because everyone has a copy, it's really, really hard for someone to secretly go in and change who owns what. It's super secure. But here's the key thing to remember. Tokenization is the idea. Blockchain is just one of the tools you can use to make that idea a reality. And please, if you remember one thing, let it be this. This is probably the most important point I'm going to make. Tokenization is just the wrapper. It's the packaging. It makes transferring an asset way more efficient, sure, but it does absolutely nothing to change the actual value of the thing you're transferring. If you tokenize a bad investment, you haven't made it good. You've just put a bad investment into a really shiny, fancy, high-tech box. So the key takeaway here is simple. This whole thing isn't about inventing a new currency. It's about building better rails for our financial system. Faster, cheaper, more efficient rails to move ownership of real-world stuff that already has value. Which, of course, leaves us with a really big and kind of exciting question. We're already seeing this happen with real estate, with art, with bonds, so as this tech gets better and these new rails get built out, you've got to ask yourself, what's going to be the next thing that becomes tap to own?